Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2022 season opening Bahrain Grand Prix. It feels so good to be saying that again. I'm going to kick this video off straight away by saying I don't think I've been this excited about the first race of the year for a very long time. Sure, I always get too giddy and excited about any season, but with this being the first chance to see F1's new cars in action, I'm even more hyped than ever. Don't get me wrong, I have no idea which way this is going to go, but I think that's what makes it all the more exciting. Anyway, preview time, and these will follow a similar format to previous years, but with a few little tweaks and additions to try and freshen them up just a little bit. But there are some things that I think just need to be included in a race weekend preview, so they're still going to be here. So coming up, I'll go over the tyres, weather, and the schedule for the weekend, take a look at some of the talking points ahead of the Grand Prix, and make some totally blind predictions. But let's start, as we always do, with a look at some of those track stats. So we're in the desert for round one of the 2022 season, the fourth time the Bahrain International Circuit will have hosted the opening race of an F1 season. It feels like it should be more than that, but it will be only 4. There are no changes to the track for this year, so a lap of the circuit is still 5.412 kilometres or 3.363 miles and consists of 15 corners. That's 6 to the left and 9 to the right, and we are set to see 57 racing laps on Sunday. And I'm going to love every single one of them. I don't care. The FIA is also stuck with the same 3 DRS zones we've seen in the past, and they run between turns 3 and 4, 10 and 11, and down that start-finish straight. The race lap record is still held by Pedro de la Rosa, who posted a 1:31.447 all the way back in 2005, a race where he went on to finish 5th for McLaren. The circuit hosted its first Grand Prix back in 2004, a race Ferrari pretty much dominated, with victory for Michael Schumacher, who led home teammate Rubens Barrichello, the two of them more than 25 seconds clear of third place Jenson Button. Not really all that close in the end. Bahrain has hosted a total of 18 races, including that first race, and in that time, 8 different drivers have taken victory, with Lewis Hamilton claiming the most with a total of 5 wins. The Brit, of course, just about seeing off Max Verstappen 12 months ago to take the win, just 7/10 of a second between them come the end, with Valtteri Bottas third in the second Mercedes. The Finn also set the fastest lap of the race with a 1:32.090 on lap 56. Wonder how close we're going to get to that this weekend. That'll be interesting to see, so bear that time in mind. But Sean, what about the tyres, I hear you cry? Yes, I know you've been secretly really looking forward to this all winter. It's the best part of the video. Anyway, the compounds available for this weekend are the hardest in the Pirelli range, and they are the hard C1, the medium C2, and the soft C3. And of course, this will be the first time we see the new 18-inch wheels in action, at least proper action anyway. Why the hardest in the range, though? Well, Pirelli says the decision was taken because of how abrasive the track surface at Sakir can be, which leads to high levels of wear and degradation. As you may remember, the tyres used last season were a step softer, but the new compounds are different when compared to previous seasons. So it may feel like there's an element of playing it safe, and that may well be the case. But at the same time, that's no great surprise. It's going to take time for teams and Pirelli to really understand how these tyres hold up under proper race conditions. In terms of strategy, and in all honesty, it's just impossible to predict that right now. More often than not, we do see more than one stop in Bahrain, so maybe that will be the case again this year. But there's not really any way of knowing right now, given we haven't seen these tyres put through their paces. Things to look out for, though, include track temperature, which can help to dictate strategy, and so can things like safety cars, something we do see in Bahrain, with 7 races at the track in the past featuring at least 1 full safety car period. I'd be surprised, though, if we didn't see a 2-stopper from some drivers on Sunday. Oh yes, of course, and don't forget the Q2 tyre rule that states the drivers who make Q3 must start the race on a tyre they set their fastest Q2 time on is gone, and all drivers will get a free choice of tyre for the races this year, which I'm really happy about because it just gives us a little bit more strategy intrigue ahead of a race day. There are a couple of tyre compounds drivers are unlikely to be using this weekend, and they are the intermediates and the wets, because at time of recording, the forecast is for a warm and dry weekend, and given the race is being held in the desert, I highly doubt that's going to shock too many people. FP1 will be sunny with highs of 19 degrees, but things will cool down ever so slightly for FP2 as the sun goes down. Don't sing. The third practice session on Saturday will also be dry with highs of 22 degrees, and it will be a couple of degrees cooler for qualifying. And on Sunday, yeah, you guessed it, it's forecast to be dry with highs of 22 degrees. And the risk of rain across the weekend is currently less than 5%, which is just another way of saying it's not going to rain. And your schedule for this one is slightly different due to the tweaks made to the race weekend format, so in case you missed that over the winter, there'll be no more media days on a Thursday with press conferences all being held and all the other stuff that comes with it on a Friday instead. That means that the first practice session on Friday will take place a whopping 30 minutes later than in 2021. Which also means FP1 kicks the season off on Friday at midday, that is GMT. FP2 starts at 3 p.m. later that afternoon, with FP3 taking place at midday on Saturday. And despite what the rumours were saying over the winter, all 3 practice sessions will still be 60 minutes long. Qualifying, cannot wait for that, gets underway from 3 p.m. on Saturday, and it is lights out for the race on Sunday at 3 p.m. and again that is in UK time. Okay, then let's have a run through some talking points, or at least a few things to note or keep an eye on ahead of this weekend. First of all, just a day before the start of the season, there is some bad news, as it has been confirmed that Sebastian Vettel has tested positive for COVID-19 and will not race this weekend in Bahrain. His place will be taken by Aston Martin's super sub Nico Hülkenberg. Yes, Hülkenberg, back again. Good news for Hülkenberg and Hülkenberg fans, but obviously, like I say, bad news, very bad news for Sebastian Vettel ahead of this brand new season, this new era. Obviously, get well soon, Seb, and I hope he's not feeling too rough with it and is fit and ready to go next weekend in Jeddah. There is some good news, though, for Daniel Ricciardo, as McLaren has confirmed that he is fit to race in Bahrain, having recovered from his bout of COVID, and the Aussie has returned several negative tests, is feeling much better and will be available for the team in Bahrain. Great news that he's okay, but I've got to admit, it's going to be a tough weekend for him, and he's definitely heading into this one on the back foot, given that he completed no running in Bahrain last week. The biggest talking point right now, though, is around which teams are where in the pecking order. If you have any idea, please let me know, because I'm clueless. And in fairness, the truth is, we don't really know anything right now, as testing doesn't ever tell us the full story. What you could argue is that Ferrari looks good in terms of delivering consistent pace, and they appear to be in the mix at the sharp end, but a lot of people have penciled Red Bull in as the favourites following testing. Both Mercedes drivers reckon they are struggling, with Lewis Hamilton saying he doesn't expect them to be fighting for wins early on. And whilst I'll admit that things do feel different this year, especially if you go back and look at some of the onboards from testing last week, we've kind of heard all this before from Mercedes, haven't we? So don't be at all surprised if they are right up there again. McLaren also looks to have some good pace, although brake issues hampered them in testing, so hopefully that's ironed out. But many people, far more in the know than me, seem to think the top 4 is the same 4 teams as last season, but in a different order. In behind that, it's somehow even more confusing. Some people are saying that Alpine and Aston Martin are in trouble, but both of those teams seem content with their running and their cars. You look at Alfa Romeo, for example, they bounced back nicely in the second test and looked better than feared after Barcelona. And I don't think anybody really knows where, let's say, Williams and Haas are, and AlphaTauri are looking good as well. One thing I will say, though, is that it doesn't feel as though one team has been cut adrift like Haas was in 2021. So hopefully, whatever the order in the rest of the pack is, all the teams can race closely and get the chance to score some good points. And it does sound as though racing closely is going to be possible in 2022 thanks to these new regulations. All the early feedback from drivers seems to be positive, so get your fingers crossed for that one. One thing many were expecting to see in Bahrain was teams lodging protests against their rivals' designs, but that appears to have died down a little bit despite the eyebrows raised by, for example, the lack of side pods on the Mercedes, something which, by the way, passed all FIA checks and is legal, and even Christian Horner eventually said last week that he believes the no-pod design ticks all the boxes. So nothing much to protest there, really. However, the wing mirrors on the Mercedes appear to be another matter. Now, although the aggressive design apparently complies with the regulations, Mattia Binotto and Christian Horner have said that they don't want the wing mirror designs to become too aggressive or, in a Red Bull boss's words, end up in a mirror war. So this is going to be discussed between teams and the FIA and everybody involved on the technical side of things, and it is thought that it could well be addressed soon. And if, by the way, anything has been said between now and this video going out, I will pop a link down below to more info. But keep an eye on the off-track politics this weekend and absolutely over the course of the season, because things could get a little bit spicy. And whilst I'm on the technical side of things, one of the words of pre-season was porpoising. I bet you're sick of hearing that now, with some teams, especially Mercedes, really badly impacted by the bouncing down the straight, and others, I'd say most notably McLaren, are suffering far less with the effect. So it's going to be fascinating to see if any team has found a way to counter that without losing too much performance in the week between testing and the first race. Perhaps unlikely, given that it has only been a week, but you never know, and I'll be watching closely how the cars look, especially on that run to turn 1. That's a good spot to keep an eye on. Now, before I get on to my predictions, I want to introduce you to a new brief feature for these previews, or most of them at least. So one of my favourite things about F1 is its history, so I'm going to pick out a story or talking point from the past in each of these videos, with the exception being the super new venues like Jeddah and Miami, who have little to no F1 history right now. That's going to change in the future, of course. So let's flash back, yeah, that's what I'm going to call these, to 2010 when F1 decided to mix it up and run the endurance layout of the Bahrain International Circuit, by far the worst used by the sport to date, in my opinion at least. Like the outer loop, drivers would take a different route after turn 4 and follow a twisty sort of, I guess you could call it an infield-like section, before rejoining the track at what we now know as turn 5. The changes transformed the circuit used by F1 into a 24-corner, 6.2-kilometre long lap, and received criticism from many due to its lack of overtaking opportunities and the fact it was just generally bloody awful. Why the change though? Well, because it's F1 and you know what they're like, they're going to try something once, but partly to try and spice up the show, which went brilliantly well, but it was also part of F1's 60th anniversary celebrations. The sport, though, swiftly reverted back to the original layout for the 2011 season, and that has been used every year in Bahrain since, with only the outer loop mixing things up when the circuit hosted 2 races in 2020. And hopefully we'll never have to endure the endurance layout ever again, although, got to be said, there will be some fond memories of that layout for Fernando Alonso, who took his first win for Ferrari that year in his first race with the Scuderia. Right then, time for some race weekend predictions, and frankly, this is all going to be guesswork, as I'm sure you've worked out. Okay, we have testing to go off, but what does that really tell us? Oh, and usual disclaimer at this point, you know what's coming. Please do not take these too seriously at all. They are just a little bit of fun, and if you do disagree with my picks, which, as I've said many times before, you really probably should, then you can let me know yours in the comment section down below. Like I say then, I'm going in blind, but I will take some inspiration, if you like, from testing where I can. So as said earlier, Red Bull and Ferrari both look good. I absolutely refuse to rule out Mercedes. And if McLaren has sorted those brake issues, they might be able to get into the mix as well. I am, though, totally hopping on board the Ferrari hype train, but I will admit I'm also ready to hop off again at the first stop because, as we've seen many times before, it could go either way with Ferrari. But I'm feeling positive, so I will say Charles Leclerc for pole position, and yes, I'm going to put him down for the win as well. I will pop Max Verstappen in second place because I think those two teams are looking strong, probably the strongest so far. That could change in coming races, of course. And rather than putting one of their teammates up there with them, I'm going to go with a third team making top 3 and say Lewis Hamilton for that final spot on the podium. Even if that car really is difficult to drive and we believe Mercedes claims, they're still going to be up there. And if Lewis Hamilton has a top 3 car, he's still got a great shot of a podium. In behind them, I think McLaren will be the best of the rest, but not by much. I honestly do think they will be able to get involved towards the front and potentially give the other teams a headache during the race, maybe with strategy, some clever strategy play, something like that. I will add as well super quickly that I've got a feeling that McLaren will be solidly clear of the teams behind. That's just how I feel right now. As for my bolder predictions, which might actually turn out not to be all that bold come the end of the weekend, are that Kevin Magnussen will snatch a top 7 finish for Haas on his return to the grid. And let's say it's a little bit of a race of attrition and we only see a total of 12 cars classified by the time the flag falls on Sunday afternoon. All in all, though, whilst I enjoy making race weekend predictions, this is going to change so quickly this season. The development race is going to be frantic, and the pecking order we see in Bahrain will change in coming races, and we could see some big movers come, let's say, mid-season. And, you know, I'm going to say this, in all honesty, I love a bit of speculation, you know that, but I'm a bit bored of it right now, and I just want to see these cars on track for real. So it is finally time for the talking to stop and the dodgy predictions to end and the racing to start, and I cannot bloody wait. That is it, though, for the Bahrain Grand Prix preview then, but you can, as ever, let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comments section down below. Now, I will be back soon with another video, and we will be live shortly after the race on Sunday with the first race reaction stream of 2022. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, as it really does help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. The season is here now, so lots to come between now and the end of the year. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.